Serenity and this is my channel, and today we're joined by Clover, Hicks, Nova, and then Ginger is behind her. Over there is Holland crying off to the side if you can hear her. And welcome back to another Hometown Horrors. Today we have a very disturbing case on Victoria Martens, a very sad story. But before we go any further, I do want to say that if you want to skip around, go for it. There are timestamps down below. As always, I do recommend stopping at the disclaimers if you choose to skip. Also, I chopped off all my hair. If you're wondering why it's shorter, it is. Don't be alarmed, I do this twice a year. Now, let's get into it. Hometown Horrors is a series on my channel. I grew up on true crime and have always been fascinated by it. Why people do what they do. The whole nature versus nurture aspect of it. Hometown Horrors is basically where I take a true crime case based in my hometown or some sort of significance in surrounding areas. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, sister city to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. There's this insane phenomenon where Ciudad Juarez, Mexico is one of the most dangerous cities in the world, often ranked on the top 10 yearly analysis list. And until 3 years ago, El Paso, Texas has always been ranked one of the safest cities in America, often ranked in the top 15. That was before an outsider with an extreme hate for Hispanics massacred 23 people. El Paso, Texas has not made it as high back onto that safest city in America list yet. No matter how safe a city may be, there are always crimes being committed. As someone who grew up in the area and knows the ins and outs, who can tell you exactly where parts of crimes have taken place and what parts of town are dangerous, I have this insider knowledge which I believe can help bring a certain perspective. As I said, El Paso was one of the safest cities for years, therefore there would only be so many cases I'd be able to cover before I ran out. So I also will be expanding my reach into other surrounding areas including Juarez, Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico, Horizon, Texas, Chaparral, New Mexico, and other surrounding areas that I'm very familiar with and that have been to. So that way I'm still able to give that insider knowledge. Today our case takes place in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a beloved day or weekend trip to many El Pasoans. It's about a 4-hour drive north from here. Now, I know it's quite a ways out, but I do have a lot of experience with Albuquerque because my uncle lived there for a long part of my childhood, so at least 4 times a year we'd go up and visit him for a long extended weekend. Lastly, the case today I'm talking about, like I said, is about Victoria Martens, a 10-year-old girl who was brutally killed and dismembered. This case was actually brought to me by one of you guys in the comment section of my baby Brianna case. I'll have linked up here. It's very heartbreaking. Someone suggested to look into this case and I did, and it is shocking. The more I go into these and you guys leave suggestions, I learned that New Mexico is very dangerous and has a lot of child abuse going on. So before we begin, I also just want to give trigger warnings for mutation, mentions of drug, meth specifically, child predators, child abuse, child sexual assault and molestation, cutting up a body, also known as dismemberment, lighting a body on fire, and of course, murder. If any of these topics you believe you would be unable to handle, please stop watching, put yourself first, and I'll see you at a later date with a different video. If I get any information wrong, please kindly let me know down below. I tried to get the following information as accurate as possible. However, I used multiple different sources, and if only one source mentioned a certain detail, but I was unable to verify it using another, I left that detail out completely and went with the most commonly reported aspect of that detail. Sources are linked down below also. Lastly, if I'm looking off to the side at all, it's because I have my iPad here loaded with the script. If I didn't have a script, I would go off topic or forget a lot of important details. I apologize if it's any inconvenience. Lastly, this video is an informational research study that I am sharing for academic entertainment reasons only. I mean absolutely no harm to anyone mentioned, especially the victim's family and the victim themselves. So grab a blanket, a snack, and a drink, and let's get into it. Victoria Martens was born on August 23rd, 2006 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The 10-year-old was a 4th grade student at Petroglyph Elementary School. She lived with her younger brother and her mother, Michelle Martens, in a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of town. Victoria, as far as I'm able to research, was raised by her single mother. There are no reports of her father being in her life, unlike her younger brother who spent weekends with his dad. That's all the information about Victoria's life I could find for the crime. The rest is riddled by the criminal trial that happened after this poor child is horrifically murdered. I wish I could tell you what her favorite TV show was, subject in school, or heck, even her favorite color, but that stuff isn't reported on. So Michelle Martens had no criminal record, but her consistent lies in this case would derail the investigation constantly, so keep that in mind with what I'm about to say. Michelle told investigators she would seek men out online to engage in sexual acts with her 2 children while she allegedly watched for pleasure. The New Mexico Children, Youth and Families Department, or CYFD, located in the state capital of Santa Fe, New Mexico, had previously received 5 different phone calls regarding the Martens household, mostly from Michelle Martens herself, beginning in 2015. On August 24, 2006, 2016, just a day after her 10th birthday, Victoria's body was found in the apartment bathtub lit on fire. So let's go back a bit. Michelle Martens met her boyfriend Fabian Gonzales on an internet dating site called Plenty of Fish, only a month prior to her daughter's murder, in July of 2016. Their relationship progressed very quickly and the two were living together in Michelle's home very soon after. He also asked her to hide their relationship from her parents and Victoria's maternal grandparents. Then one day, Fabian just informed Michelle that his cousin Jessica Kelley, who was released from prison, would be living with the four. Jessica was only out of prison for 4 days before the murder, and some reports say she was released from prison on August 15th and others say August 19th. Fabian soon began taking other drug users to Michelle's apartment when she wasn't home, starting on August 10th of 2016. His cousin was also a known drug user. Nancy Lachlan, a reporter from Albuquerque news station KOAT, was one of the first reporters on this case. She received a text early that August of 2016 in the morning from a source of hers claiming they had a lead on a case. That was the worst homicide he had ever seen, that a child was dismembered. The information KOAT was able to get from the investigators that morning was that 10-year-old Victoria Martens had been so violently killed that she had been chopped up and set on fire with her body parts placed into separate bags and put into different parts of the apartment. Within hours of the investigators arriving, Victoria Martens' mother, Michelle Martens, was arrested along with her boyfriend Fabian Gonzales and his cousin Jessica Kelley, all three of the adults who were at the apartment together when they were arrested. They were each charged with multiple felonies including child abuse, murder, and sexual penetration of a minor. Now I know what you're thinking, sexual abuse, how did that charge come about? Well, this is where the case gets dicey and how Michelle's constant lies derailed the investigation. Much of what investigators believed happened that night was based on what Michelle told police in the days after her daughter was found dead. Michelle at the police station told them that Victoria was drugged using meth to loosen her up, and she sat back and watched as Fabian and Jessica repeatedly raped her daughter and eventually murdered the child. First responders were horrified, and when news hit the general public, outrage occurred, with a big push to change legislation, including the return of the death penalty to New Mexico state. There was also a push to get the FBI to step in and investigate and prosecute the case through the United States Attorney's Office. Former Governor Susana Martinez spoke exclusively to KOAT in August of 2016, calling this one of the worst cases she had ever seen in her career. Governor Martinez was the former prosecutor of Santa Ana County before being elected the governor. We talked about her in the Baby Brianna case, which is very similar to this, and she was the one who put those adults behind bars. On September 16, 2016, Martens, Gonzales, and Kelley were indicted on multiple charges, including intentional abuse of a child, aggravated criminal sexual penetration, murder, and tampering with evidence. During their preliminary hearings in Bernalillo County District Court, all three pled not guilty to the charges. They were also told not to have any contact with each other as the case progressed. In November of 2016, police received Victoria's autopsy report where it revealed that the cause of her death was strangulation. This report also put multiple details of Michelle's Martens' version of the story into question. Victoria had no methamphetamine in her system, which is the drug her mom said the trio gave her. Now, New Mexico has a really bad problem with meth. That's the drug of the state's choice. If you've seen Breaking Bad at all, everything that happens in there is pretty much true when it comes to meth. However, despite this contradicting detail in Michelle's story, investigators keep investigating. The autopsy also showed that Victoria had a sexually transmitted disease, either HPV or human papillomavirus, with a history of sexual abuse. Investigators were reviewing all the digital devices of the three adults, including cell phones and laptops, to see if any of them had recorded some sort of sex act that Victoria may have been forced to do on video. Soon it was January 2017, a new district attorney takes office as a second judicial district attorney, Raul Torres, and begins to review the case. He expresses concern over aspects of how the investigation and follow-up procedures were handled. Torres forms a new team of seasoned investigators to take over the case. The new team soon realizes that Michelle's version of events is not adding up with all the evidence they are discovering. On January 17, 2017, the CYFD released an intensive internal audit of the Victoria Martens case. The audit said CYFD was called 5 times about the family before Martens' death. Former CYFD Secretary Monique Jacobson ordered the audit to see how those prior encounters were handled. As the investigation continues, detectives figure out Michelle had given what is called a false confession. For more than a year, police investigated the false claims made by Michelle Martens. The information that was guiding the initial investigation and the charging decisions in the case were based primarily on the statement, which is now known was a false statement. Gary Mitchell, Michelle's defense attorney, said as follows when the false confession was revealed. Michelle Martens is a people pleaser, so when she's asked a question, she's gonna answer whatever way she thinks that they're gonna want to hear. I'm sorry, what? No one wanted to hear the story Michelle was giving the investigators. Police just wasted a year investigating a dead-end confession. This is what police started to believe really happened the night Victoria was killed. Victoria gets off her school bus and walks to her apartment. Fabian Gonzales then takes her to a gas station. They come back, then Fabian Gonzales and Michelle Martens' cell phone data showed that they left the apartment. According to police, they went to buy some drugs from one of his relatives. Cell phone and detailed Google location data collaborated those eyewitness accounts and definitely placed Michelle and Fabian outside the apartment at the time of the rape and murder. They leave Victoria with Jessica Kelley, Fabian Gonzales' cousin, who had just gotten out of prison and was staying with them at the apartment, and she also had a long violent criminal history. Jessica Kelley's prior convictions included battery and assault of a police officer, among others. With this theory, in May of 2017, the district attorney and lawyers for the suspects filed a request for the trio to have separate trials. Legally, trials need to be separated so all three defendants can get a fair trial. The Supreme Court has ruled that if more than one person is charged with the same crime, they're entitled to separate trials. On May 27, 2017, while on jailhouse phone calls with his mother, Fabian Gonzales claims he had nothing to do with the murder of Victoria Martens and that the evidence will clear him. On July 17, 2017, investigators then asked for Jessica Kelley's version of events. That Victoria was in her bedroom and that the door was open. She says a man she didn't know came into the apartment and killed Victoria. Then he leaves. Then Fabian comes back with Michelle Martens and they keep Michelle occupied. Michelle never checked on her daughter. As the hours go on, investigators believe that Jessica Kelley and Fabian Gonzales chopped her up. They put her body parts into bags throughout the apartment and then they set those bags on fire. In addition to the cell phone data and new testimony, investigators also discovered male DNA on Victoria's body. There was partial DNA found on Victoria's back that didn't match Fabian. His DNA was found in other parts of the apartment but not on Victoria's body. There was a partial DNA from another male. They checked with all the first responders and it didn't match any of theirs. So it's a partial DNA that's very difficult to match. There's a lot of emphasis being put on that unknown male. But at the end of the day, what did the detectives know other than Jessica Kelley's story and the fact that there is some DNA, male DNA of unknown origin? The murder and sexual assault charges against each suspect were then dropped because there was no proof that Victoria was assaulted the night she was killed. In the past, most likely, but not that night of the killing. In August 2017, a year after her death, Victoria's grandparents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico. On November 17, 2017, investigators looked further into phone records of the trio and found that things did not match up to what the suspects said they were doing the night of Victoria Martens' death. Court records revealed Gonzales, Martens, and Kelley were on their phones before and after Victoria's death. Record shows that they talked to each other and other people. The digital footprints contradicted the suspects' stories. 12 days later, on November 23, 2017, DNA evidence in the Victoria Martens case was submitted to a Florida lab to be tested. The DNA was tested then using a new technology called STR-MIC. Then on June 29, 2018, a bombshell announcement in the case was made. Trujillo County District Attorney Raul Torres announced that rape and murder charges had been dropped against Michelle Martens and Fabian Gonzales in light of new evidence. Cell phone data provided proof that neither was home the time of Victoria's death. The cell phone data not only proved Martens and Gonzales were not in the apartment at the time of Victoria's death, but the DNA from the fourth person, the unidentified male, was also found on Victoria's body. Up to this point, the public didn't know any of this. That fourth unknown person is the only person charged with murder. Investigators determined Victoria was raped and killed between 7 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. on August 23, 2016. District Attorney Raul Torres released the timeline of events, which essentially is what Jessica Kelley said, how the day went. The fourth suspect has yet to be found, only that DNA testing was able to rule out any other known male in Victoria's life or any law enforcement who were investigating the murder. Now, I'm going to take you back to the detailed timeline of events that the DA released because there are some key details about the trio that I feel are worth mentioning. So there are some things I haven't covered yet in the case, so part of what I'm going to say may not be making sense because it's jumping ahead, but I think it's important to know how investigators are cataloging the timeline of events in their mind and also how they categorize them by important events. I'm reading the report directly as it was released. 1. How Michelle Martens and Fabian Gonzales met. Michelle Martens met Fabian Gonzales on a dating website, Plenty of Fish, in July 2016. 2. Jessica Kelley is released from prison. Kelley was released from prison on August 15, 2016. Kelley has a background of convictions including trafficking, controlled substances, and conspiracy to commit criminal sexual penetration. Gonzales contacted Kelley, who was his cousin, shortly after her release. Victoria met Gonzales and Kelley at an apartment on August 17, 2016 at 10 p.m. Gonzales used to provide food for Victoria. Kelley and Gonzales used drugs together at one of Gonzales' other girlfriend's apartment on August 17th. 3. Kelley moves into the apartment. Gonzales Gonzales invited Kelley to move into Martens' apartment on August 18th, 2016 and charged her $50 rent. Martens wasn't aware of the rental agreement. 4. Friends and family of Kelley Gonzales get involved. Friends and family held a barbecue on August 21st, 2016 for Kelley's release from prison. Gonzales also attended this barbecue. A woman asked Gonzales to leave, claiming he stole from her in the past, but Gonzales refused. Gonzales got in a fight with the woman and another person. Gonzales got a black eye from the altercation. Gonzales called his brother after the fight and drove to his house. Gonzales called the woman and threatened to bring his brother back to the house. That evening, Gonzales got into an argument through text with the woman. Their threats were made from both parties. A man stayed in front of the house where the barbecue was hosted and had a gun on him at all times. Gonzales' brothers are founding members of the TCK gang. Gonzales is also part of this gang according to the state document. A gang in Arizona. Gonzales searched for guns online through the night on August 21st, 2016. 5. The next day. The search for what happens with a black swollen eye from Michelle Martens' phone was made on August 22nd, 2016 at 11:30 a.m. Additional searches for guns were made this afternoon. Gonzales and Kelley delivered meth to a person. Gonzales tells Michelle that she should do a line with them, but she refuses. 6. The afternoon of Michelle's birthday. Victoria turns 10 years old and took the bus to school that morning. Gonzales took Michelle to someone's place to get drugs around 11:40 a.m. The person warned Gonzales and Michelle that Kelley shouldn't be in the apartment and was acting weird. The man said Kelley gave him an EBT card to use and that the devil told her not to give him the pin. Gonzales and Michelle returned to their apartment but left again around 2:30 p.m. to drink and get drugs. At 2:33 p.m., Michelle texted a woman telling her to knock on her apartment door pretending to be her aunt and make sure everything was okay. 3 minutes later at 2:36 p.m., Michelle texted her mom and asked her to pick up Victoria from the bus stop after school. A minute later at 2:37 p.m., Michelle ignored a call from her mother. Gonzales convinced Michelle that Kelley should pick up Victoria from the bus stop. Michelle was skeptical, but Gonzales tells her to trust Kelley and that it was safe for them to leave Victoria with her. At 2:39 p.m., Michelle texted her mom, "Never mind, I got it." Her mom then responded and told her that she had been trying to call. Around 3 p.m., Gonzales and Michelle stayed at a man's residence until 4:40 p.m. and made a trip to the liquor store during this time. At 3:37 p.m., Michelle texted Kelley reminding her to get Victoria from the bus stop. At 4:08 p.m., Michelle texted Kelley again asking whether she picked up Victoria, but Kelley didn't respond. At 4:35 p.m., a neighbor texted Michelle that Victoria is trying to reach her. At 4:45 p.m., Victoria went home and neighbors told Michelle that it appeared someone else was in the apartment. Gonzales and Martens returned to the apartment at 5:05 p.m. Kelley gave Victoria around $45 to $80. Gonzales took Victoria in the bathroom, closed the door, and talked to her about the money. At 6:08 p.m., Gonzales took Victoria to the gas station and bought her a soda without Michelle's permission. 7 hours leading up to Victoria's murder. At 6:09 p.m., Kelley's sister, who was in prison, called her. Kelley told her sister she was tweaking and hallucinating. Gonzales and Michelle left Victoria at the apartment while they went to get marijuana from his brother's home. Gonzales and Michelle returned to their apartment at around 7:01 p.m. Kelley and Victoria were outside at the time. Kelley yelled at Gonzales and Michelle because they brought the wrong cigarettes for her. Gonzales and Michelle left at 7:05 p.m. Kelley and Victoria had a conversation with 2 neighbors. Kelley spoke over Victoria and told neighbors she gave Victoria $45. Kelley then physically pulled Victoria back into the apartment. At 7:32 p.m., Gonzales' brother called him, so he and Michelle went to his residence and then another man's residence. Gonzales told Kelley he's picking up an ounce of meth. 8. Gonzales and Martens returned to the apartment. Kelley said that she was scared someone's gonna roll up on the apartment while Gonzales is gone. She sees a car with 2 people repeatedly drive past the apartment. A man entered the apartment and said he's looking for Fabio, which is Gonzales' street name. The man went into Victoria's room and killed her. He told Kelley that Gonzales fucked up and knew that he had done so. He instructed Kelley that she and Gonzales need to clean up the mess or she and her kids would be next. At 8:48 p.m., Gonzales and Martens returned to the apartment. They both appeared high, paranoid, and tweaked out when they returned. They were sitting in Michelle's car in the parking lot, singing to loud music. During this time, Kelley carried Victoria's lifeless body down the steps outside the apartment. Victoria was wrapped in a blanket. Kelley returned upstairs with Victoria's body. Gonzales and Michelle followed a short time later. Kelley and Gonzales had a private conversation where Kelley told Gonzales that Victoria was dead. They decided to conceal the homicide, clean up the crime scene, and bury Victoria's body. Gonzales distracted Martens by having her cook dinner and then put her to bed. Around 10:26 p.m., Gonzales sent 2 texts to the woman he got into a fight with at the barbecue and said, "Answer me and get over here now, or I'll go looking for you." 9. The crime scene. Warning, these details are extremely disturbing. Gonzales and Kelley dismembered Victoria's arms with a knife. Gonzales removed organs from her body with a trash bag. Gonzales and Kelley placed Victoria's remains in a trash bag. They cleaned up the blood and other evidence in the apartment. Kelley and Gonzales carried Victoria's body into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub. Investigators found found a knife with blood in the kitchen with partial DNA that matched Victoria's. They also found organs in a trash bag inside the laundry hamper in the living room. Other evidence was found with blood on it. Smoke detectors were removed, and Victoria's body was set on fire after being wrapped in plastic and a sheet. Her body was then placed in the hall bathroom. 10. After the murder. Around 1 a.m. on August 24th, 2016, Gonzales and Kelley had a conversation on the balcony. Kelley said they should go inside, but Gonzales said no. Around 4:15 a.m., a neighbor heard a man yelling, saying, "Be quiet, you'll wake up the neighbors." After the homicide, Michelle told Gonzales she killed my daughter, but Gonzales disputed the death. Gonzales told first responders that Kelley was just a friend even though they were cousins. Kelley closed the door on officers and jumped off the second-story balcony, which resulted in a fractured ankle and other injuries. 11. Cause of death. The Office of the Medical Examiner determined the cause of death to be manual strangulation. Compression of Victoria's neck impaired blood flow to the brain, resulting in loss of consciousness and death. Multiple body parts were removed, and there was penetrating trauma to the rectum. No intoxicating substances, including meth or alcohol, were found in Victoria's systems. 12. Kelley and Gonzales talked to officials. Kelley said there were 3 other people in the apartment and officers should try to find the real killer. Gonzales admitted to living in Michelle's apartment, said he was the man of the house and protector of Victoria. He admitted he knew Kelley had been in prison and that she had a very violent past. Gonzales said his family wanted him to not have Kelley live at the apartment. He admitted they did meth together shortly after her release from prison. He suggested Victoria died because they suffocated her. She suffocated her. He said he saw Kelley stabbing and hacking at Victoria with a knife. He said he owes his life to that little girl. He denied ever being in the barbecue days before the murder. So from that, I was able to clear up a few things. Why in Fabian Gonzales' mugshot he has a black eye? Apparently he also had other girlfriends, along with him inviting his cousin to live with them at the apartment, which he doesn't pay rent on, and then charging his cousin rent. Also why Jessica Kelley looked rough in her mugshot. It still doesn't explain why Michelle had a huge gash with stitches on her face in her mugshot. In June 2018, after the list of events was released, Michelle Martens entered into a plea deal of a lesser charge of reckless child abuse resulting in death. A physical and psychological profile showed Michelle Martens had personality traits that made her susceptible to false confession. She was facing up to 15 years in prison. On September 14, 2018, a plea deal for Jessica Kelley was rejected by a judge. Judge Charles Brown rejected the plea based on answers Kelley made during the plea hearing and the charges she would have pleaded to in the agreement. On January 4th, 2019, the rape charges were dropped against Jessica Kelley because of expert forensic witnesses not being able to support the idea that Victoria Martens was raped by Kelley. 3 days later, on January 7, 2019, a plea deal was reached with prosecutors for Jessica Kelley. She pleaded no contest to charges related to Victoria Martens' death, including reckless abuse of a child resulting in death. The murder charges against Kelley were dropped. Court records say Kelley told investigators she was high on drugs while babysitting Victoria Martens when an unknown male entered the apartment and killed Victoria. Court records say Kelley told investigators she set Victoria's body on fire after Victoria was killed. As part of the plea deal, Jessica Kelley agreed to testify in the trial of Fabian Gonzales and the unidentified fourth man, but she will not have to face a jury. Jessica Kelley still faced up to 50 years in prison. The community had a lot of frustrations towards the plea deal, as there hadn't been any justice really in this case just yet. However, 50 years is more than a life sentence in New Mexico state. A life sentence in there is only 30 years. On November 7, 2019, Fabian Gonzales was released from jail until his trial. Prosecutors had failed to show Gonzales as a danger to the community, and Judge Charles Brown made the ruling. Gonzales and his lawyer maintained his innocence. He was now charged with child abuse resulting in death and tampering with evidence. The attorneys for Fabian Gonzales maintained that he didn't have anything to do with Victoria's death, claiming it was a small apartment. They said he was woken up and didn't know what had happened to Victoria, and he ran home. But didn't he live at that apartment full time? The reason why it was taking so long for Fabian to go to trial is because prosecutors wanted to bring up what they say was his past, including his ties to gangs and drugs. Well, the judge in this case said no, so prosecutors were appealing the decision in order to use that evidence in the trial. The news of Gonzales' release sparked outrage in Albuquerque communities. Residents responded with protests in Victoria's name. On March 28, 2022, Kelley was sentenced for her role in Victoria Martens' death. Judge Cindy Leos sentenced Jessica Kelley to 50 years in prison with 6 years suspended because that is as long as she's already been in jail. Once Kelley is released from prison, she will be on probation for 5 years. She got the full sentence she was facing. 20 years longer than the New Mexico life sentence. On July 11, 2022, Fabian Gonzales' trial began. In the first week, both of the prosecutors and defense mentioned Gonzales' cousin Jessica Kelley. Then prosecutors argued Gonzales put Martens in danger by taking her from her mother, Michelle Martens. Gonzales' lawyers claimed Jessica Kelley killed Martens. Retired Albuquerque Police Sergeant Christopher Enyart testified and said that he was one of the first on the scene that early morning to see Victoria after her death. Enyart described how he wanted to do everything he could for Victoria. One of of the things that was really haunting to me was that I didn't check for a pulse. Enyart said, even though I knew she was dead, I didn't make the effort and check for a pulse. I went back in and checked for a pulse. Kelley also then testified against her cousin. In week 2, Albuquerque Police Sergeant Joshua Brown finished up his testimony. He was the lead homicide detective when 10-year-old Victoria Martens was killed in 2016. Along with that, Brown conducted the interviews of Gonzales and the mother, Michelle Martens. Brown's testimony focused on those interviews. After his testimony was finished, forensic scientist Jeffrey Smith took the stand to go over more DNA evidence. Smith confirmed that none of the testing knives showed Gonzales' DNA. Gonzales' DNA was found on a mop and 2 CDs inside the apartment. Closing arguments happened in week 3. Martens recalled the altercation she had with Jessica Kelley, the only other person present at the house before Victoria was killed by an alleged unidentified man. Where the fuck is my daughter? I told her, Martens said, and she still didn't answer me. She just started beating up on me again. Martens testified she was struck with an iron by Kelley, which could explain why she has a scar on her face. Then Martens testified how she found out her daughter was dead. I eventually made my way out of the door and squashed her hand in the door. Martens said, she let go of my hair and then said, by the way, your daughter is dead. Both sides then rested their cases. On August 1st, 2022, the jury found Fabian Gonzales guilty on all accounts, including reckless abuse of a child and tampering with evidence. Then on October 27th, 2022, Fabian was sentenced to 37.5 years in prison by Judge Cindy Leos. So again, longer than the life sentence in New Mexico. Then on November 10th, 2022, Michelle Martens was sentenced by Judge Cindy Leos to 12 years in the New Mexico Department of Corrections with 6 years of credit for the time served before sentencing. That means Michelle Martens will only serve 6 more years in prison as of the sentencing date. Police are still searching for the fourth suspect, John Doe, after a DNA profile matching email was found on Victoria's body. That DNA profile is the only one charged with murder in this case. When this person is found, Jessica Kelley, because of her plea deal, will have to testify against him. While the search for Victoria Martens' killer carries on, the community continues to honor her short life and ensure her name is never forgotten. After her death, Albuquerque natives held memorials at a local park and the school she attended. There's a bench that was put up at her school in her honor, and her fellow classmates did a lot of artwork after her death in her honor. The community on the anniversary of her death every year pays tribute to her. In August of 2019, Albuquerque residents joined Victoria's grandparents and other family members for a memorial service in her honor of what would have been her 13th birthday. Her godmother said the following: "Happy birthday, dear Victoria. She was a beautiful person inside and out. To remember her as a beautiful person that she was, I think it's just important as trying to set awareness for what led to this. Everybody that is guilty of it needs to be held responsible. This was a child. I mean, her life ended way too soon." Reporters interviewed Victoria's neighbors, friends, teachers, and coaches, and everyone was devastated. The community is still healing after her horrific death. That is all I have on this case. I do want to say, from what I could tell, Victoria was extremely loved. Just like in the baby Brianna case, Albuquerque has adopted Victoria as their child. They will always make sure her memory lives on and is never forgotten, and her life will always be celebrated. However, it's not just that Victoria's grandparents loved her and adored her, along with her godmother did. It's not like this precious child wasn't loved. She had 3 close family members who would have taken her in to live with them at any time without a second thought. So Victoria was extremely loved. I mean, she's only 4 years younger than me, so she would have been 16 years old today. Victoria should be in high school as a sophomore, maybe having gotten her driver's license after her 16th birthday, hanging out with friends and looking into colleges she wants to apply to if she wanted to go to university after high school. She should be figuring out what she wants to major in and just enjoying her teenage years, maybe even having a big sweet 16th birthday party last year, but she was viciously killed instead. So let me know what your thoughts on this case are. I don't know. Obviously these 3 adults did something. Are investigators wrong for just pushing everything that happened onto this unknown suspect? Unknown DNA. Is it wrong? I don't know. You let me know what your thoughts on this case down below is. It's another hard one to get through. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my socials are linked down below if you want to follow me on any of them. And the doggo picture of the day is this picture of my son Jinky eating a bone, and then Pix is in the background mad at him. Alright, love you, mean it, kisses, don't do anything stupid, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!